Have you ever stopped to think about this really powerful idea? A collective identity, a kind of shared destiny, stretching right across continents, across generations.
It's quite something to imagine, isn't it? A vision so strong it just cuts through borders, languages, even, the really brutal breaks in history.
Exactly. And today, that's what we're diving into, Pan-Africanism. It's this profound and always evolving movement, all focused on the unity, the liberation of African peoples everywhere.
And it's definitely not just some dusty chapter in a history book.
No, not at all. It's like a living, breathing force, still shaping things globally, even now.
And to help us navigate this, well, it's a pretty intricate and incredibly rich landscape. We've really leaned on some powerful scholarly works.
Right.
Our main guide, you could say, for this deep dive has been Hakim Adi's really comprehensive book, Pan-Africanism, A History.
A great resource.
Absolutely. And we've also pulled in insights from studies on really key events, like the 1958 All-African Peoples Conference. These sources, they give you this deep, nuanced view of how Pan-Africanism started, how it changed over centuries. It's kind of a shortcut, really, to understanding why it still matters.
So our mission for you listening for this deep dive, it's pretty clear.
Yeah.
We want to unpack all the different sides of Pan-Africanism.
Yeah. Trace it back to its roots.
Follow its evolution, through the big moments, the key figures, and really explore why it's still relevant today.
You'll probably discover some surprising things, connect some dots you hadn't seen before.
Hopefully, yeah. And maybe have a few of those aha moments about how this whole vision impacts our world, past and present. So let's get into it.
Okay, first things first. What is Pan-Africanism exactly? The sources make it really clear it's never been just one single thing, no single definition everyone agrees on.
Right. It's more like a big tent.
That's a good way to put it. A broad church, maybe. Lots of different visions, different ways of approaching it. But there's a core agreement underneath it all.
Which is?
That Pan-Africanism is always consistently concerned with the social, the economic, the cultural, and the political emancipation of all African peoples. And that includes people in the African diaspora.
And what holds that big tent up? What's the foundation?
It's this deep, really unwavering belief. Belief in unity, in a common history, and crucially, a common purpose for all African peoples on the continent and in the diaspora.
Their destinies are seen as, linked?
Fundamentally interconnected, that's the word the sources use. This idea that, what happens to one group affects everyone. An injustice over here resonates over there. That's what really binds it all together.
So it's not just about shared history, but shared future, too.
Exactly. Past, present, and future are all tied up. And a really critical part for many Pan-Africanists isn't just about liberating individuals or even nations. It's about the African continent itself.
Ooh.
The land, yes. Advancing the continent. It's seen as more than just a place where people live now. It's the symbolic homeland, sometimes the literal homeland, for the entire diaspora. A place for return, for renewal, for self-determination.
That connection to the continent seems like a really powerful thread.
It really is. And it's vital to understand where these ideas really took root, in the modern sense.
Right.
While you could maybe trace philosophical links way back, Pan-Africanist thought and action, as we understand it today as a movement, was primarily provoked by something specific.
Which was?
The brutal forced dispersal of Africans. Through the transatlantic trafficking of captives, this horrific system, it started late 15th century, went right through to the end of the 19th.
And this wasn't just migration.
Oh, absolutely not. The sources call it the largest forced migration in history. And it wasn't separate from other things. It was deeply tied up with the rise of global capitalism, with European colonial rule spreading across Africa, and with that virulent, just dehumanizing anti-African racism that was used to justify it all.
So that trauma, that history is fundamental.
It fundamentally shaped the earliest expressions of Pan-African thought. It had to. It became this conscious, urgent response to unimaginable suffering and injustice.
With a double aim, it sounds like.
Exactly. One, resist the exploitation, refute the racism, but also, crucially, celebrate African achievement, African identity, look forward.
Towards what?
Towards a genuinely united, independent Africa that was seen as the foundation, the absolute bedrock for liberating all Africans, whether they were on the continent or scattered across the globe.
Okay, so that sets the stage. Now, I've heard another term sometimes, especially maybe in academic circles, Black internationalism.
Ah, yes. The source material brings that up. It nates this recent trend, mainly in U.S. academia, to use that as an alternative.
How's it defined?
Often as struggles that are connected in some conscious way to an overarching notion of Black liberation, but maybe aiming for a more universal emancipation that might stretch beyond a strictly African identity.
Okay. So potentially broader.
Potentially. But here's the interesting bit. When you look at examples cited for Black internationalism, like Garveyism or the Black Power movement later on, the source says it becomes difficult to see how Black internationalism can usefully be distinguished from Pan-Africanism.
So is it just a different label for the same thing?
That's the big question it raises, right? Is it a genuinely distinct concept in practice, or just semantics?
Where did the phrase even come from?
Well, apparently the phrase Black internationalism, or internationalism noir in French, was borrowed by an academic, Brent Hayes Edwards, from a Martinican writer, Jane Nardal, back in 1920s Paris.
And what did she mean by it?
Nardal used it to talk about the growing links she saw between Negroes of all origins and nationalities in Paris. She emphasized a certain pride in being Black and this turning back towards Africa, cradle of the Blacks, in recalling a common origin.
So even her original use sounds very Pan-African.
Exactly, deeply rooted in that shared African heritage, which makes the distinction even fuzzier.
So what's the takeaway on these terms?
Ultimately, while academics might debate it, the source concludes there's just no evidence that Black internationalism was ever widely used by the activists themselves. Pan-Africanism has been and remains the preferred term.
That says a lot. The movement itself chose its identity.
It really does. It suggests the power was in that clear, unifying identity Pan-African, which resonated more deeply than a perhaps broader, more academic internationalism. It's a reminder that labels matter, sure, but the lived experience, the self-identification within a movement, often matters more.
Okay, so we've got this broad concept, this evolving philosophy. But let's go back. Where did the actions, the early organizing, really start?
The sources point us way back, actually, long before Pan-African was even a word. Back to the earliest glimmers of this collective consciousness, particularly in the diaspora.
For people who were already organizing.
Yes. Even before the late 19th century, you had organized efforts by Africans scattered across the globe. They were trying to combat racism, trying to end the trafficking of people, or even trying to organize ways to get back to Africa, repatriation.
Can you give an example?
One of the earliest and really notable ones is the Sons of Africa. This was an organization formed in the 1780s in Britain.
The Sons of Africa, okay.
Yeah, identified as one of the first Pan-African organizations. It brought together formerly enslaved African abolitionists. You might know the names Olaudah Equiano, Atoba Cugoano.
Vaguely, yes. Equiano wrote a famous narrative, didn't he?
He did. The interesting narrative, hugely influential. These men, they came from different parts of West Africa, but they found common cause in England. They united to tackle the problems they shared. The dehumanization, the injustice of slavery.
And they weren't just talking amongst themselves.
No, they were active, writing powerful letters to newspapers, lobbying parliament, working with other abolitionists. They were organized.
And you mentioned Equiano's writing. How did that fit in?
It was crucial. Figures like Equiano and Cugoano used their writing not just to tell their stories, but to actively reclaim their identity. Take Equiano, he'd been known by his slave name, Gustavus Vassa. But in his book, he deliberately reclaimed his African name, Olaudah Equiano, and restyled himself the African. That act, that self-designation, was huge.
Why was that so significant?
Because it was a conscious shift, moving beyond maybe identifying as Fante or Igbo or Yoruba to embrace this new, common, Pan-African identity African. It was about forging a collective self in the face of systems designed to strip that identity away. Revolutionary, really.
And were they also challenging the negative ideas about Africa itself?
Absolutely. This was a time of intense anti-African racism, portraying Africa as barbaric, its people as inferior. But writers like Equiano, Phyllis Wheatley, James Graniosa, they pushed back. They presented Africa positively, celebrated its cultures.
Was religion a factor too?
Yes, definitely. A new kind of African Christianity was emerging, one that emphasized community, liberation theology almost. And this helped foster Pan-African consciousness across the English-speaking world, Britain, North America, the Caribbean, West Africa. It provided another layer of connection.
Now, moving forward slightly, the Haitian Revolution comes up often. Why was that so pivotal?
Oh, pivotal doesn't even cover it. Seismic is more like it. It started in the French colony of Saint-Domingue, August 1791, and the sources call it perhaps the most important event to undermine both racism and the slave system in that whole era.
Because it led to Haiti's independence.
Exactly. The creation of Haiti in 1804, the first modern Black republic anywhere in the world. Think about what that meant.
It completely contradicted the racist ideas of the time.
Totally. Enslaved people, systematically dehumanized, deemed incapable, they not only rose up, they defeated the armies of Britain, France, and Spain, the superpowers of the day.
Wow.
It wasn't just military victory, it shattered the core lie of European racial superiority. It proved African capacity, African agency on a world stage.
So its impact must have been enormous.
Instantly, Haiti became this iconic status amongst all those of African descent globally. It produced these enduring heroes and heroines, Toussaint Louverture, Dessalines, Santé Belair, symbols of Black liberation.
And Haiti became a safe haven.
Yes. Its constitution established equal human rights, made it a refuge for all Africans. Thousands of African Americans actually migrated there seeking freedom and dignity.
So it was Pan-Africanism in action.
In many ways, yes. An early, powerful, practical form of it. A living testament to African unity and self-determination. Its shockwaves inspired revolts and movements for generations.
Were there other examples of this kind of unity and resistance?
Definitely. Think about the Revolt of the Malés in Brazil, 1835, a major urban slave revolt, largely organized by enslaved Muslim Africans from different ethnic groups. They united under Islam and a shared desire for freedom.
And maroon communities.
Yes, sustained resistance from maroon communities throughout the Americas. Palmares in Brazil is a famous example. These were communities formed by Africans who'd escaped slavery, often from diverse backgrounds. They consciously built their own common languages, religious practices, worldviews, all in pursuit of liberation.
Creating new African societies, essentially.
Exactly, embodying Pan-Africanism in practice long before the term was common.
What about movement back to Africa? Was that happening too?
It was. After Britain abolished the transatlantic trafficking of captives in 1807, you had tens of thousands of African recaptives.
Recaptives meaning?
People freed from slave ships on the high seas by the British Navy. Many were taken back to Africa, specifically to the British colony of Sierra Leone.
And this group became influential.
Very. Many received Western education, for instance at Fora Bay College in Freetown, which became a real hub. They then spread out across West Africa, some returning to their original homes, carrying these new ideas of liberation, self-governance. Fora Bay especially educated a whole generation of future leaders.
And then there's Liberia. That's another key place, right?
Absolutely. Founded and developed by the American Colonization Society, the ACS, early 19th century, it became another major haven for repatriated African Americans.
But the ACS's motives were complicated.
Very complicated. You had genuine humanitarians involved wanting to help freed slaves, but you also had others driven by racist fear, wanting to remove free Black populations from the U.S. Mixed bag.
But regardless of the ACS, Liberia itself became important.
Hugely important. Its independence in 1847 was seen by many Africans globally as a powerful symbol of African achievement, a concrete opportunity to prove the capabilities of those of African descent. It was a tangible, sovereign piece of Africa from which to advocate for Black people everywhere.
This period also saw some really key thinkers emerge, right? Individuals shaping the narrative.
Yes, absolutely. Visionaries and advocates, people like Martin Robinson Delaney.
Who was he?
A prominent U.S. abolitionist, writer, medical practitioner. He saw this common cause developing among Blacks and colored races globally. He strongly advocated for the regeneration of Africa by people from the diaspora.
Did he want African Americans to emigrate?
Initially, he considered places in the Americas, but eventually, yes. He concluded emigration to Africa was necessary for the colored race to get back self-government and independence. His policy in 1860 was blunt. Africa for the African race and Black men to rule them.
Wow, quite direct.
Very. Then you have Edward Wilmot Blyden, seen as one of the key thinkers of Pan-Africanism.
He moved to Liberia, didn't he? From the Caribbean.
He did, and that journey really shaped him. He strongly pushed for repatriation, for racial pride. He thought Liberia could be the nucleus of a West African state.
And he challenged racist ideas directly.
Head on, in works like A Vindication of the Negro Race in 1857. And he's famous for articulating this idea of a unique African personality, that African cultures had their own inherent dignity and value.
But you mentioned complexity with Blyden earlier.
Yes, it's important. He's hugely influential. Garvey, Nkrumah, they rate him. But his views could seem contradictory. He actually supported British colonialism in some ways, thought it could help with African regeneration, education, infrastructure, even welcomed the partition of Africa initially.
That's surprising.
It shows the tough realities, maybe the pragmatic compromises these early figures wrestled with, trying to navigate empire, leverage what they could, even if it looks contradictory now.
Who else stands out from this era?
James Africanus Horton, a Sierra Leonean military surgeon scientist studied in Britain. He actually adopted the name Africanus because of the racism he faced there to assert his identity.
And what was his contribution?
He was the first African to openly campaign for self-government, not just in one country, but throughout British West Africa. He championed African nationality, a unified West African identity, wrote detailed critiques of Victorian racism, laid out plans for self-government, a real political visionary.
It sounds like networks were starting to form, too. People
Yeah.
connecting these ideas across regions.
Definitely. You had figures like Mojola Agbabi in Nigeria, a journalist, religious leader promoting African-run churches, cultural pride, changing his European name. Powerful stuff.
And connecting people across the Atlantic.
Yes, people like John E. Bruce, a self-taught African-American historian and journalist. He was crucial in linking like-minded figures, West Africa, South Africa, Britain, the Caribbean, the U.S. He later joined Garvey's UNAA, which shows how these Pan-African networks were becoming well-established by the dawn of the 20th century. These individuals were weaving the threads together.
Any other key connectors before we get to the 1900s?
One more worth mentioning, Dusé Muhammad Ali, a journalist, Egyptian-Sudanese background. In 1912, he started the African Times and Orient Review, or ATOR.
What was its focus?
Fascinatingly, it was pan-Oriental, pan-African. It called for Afro-Asian solidarity, attacked racism, attacked imperialism, and he was a significant influence on Marcus Garvey. Shows how these ideas were crossing continents, cross-pollinating.
Okay, so that brings us right up to the 20th century. And a major event happens right at the start.
Yes, the London Pan-African Conference of 1900, truly a foundational moment for modern Pan-Africanism.
Who organized it?
A Trinidadian lawyer based in London, Henry Sylvester Williams. He founded the African Association and had this vision for an international meeting.
And who came?
A remarkable group of Black intellectuals and activists. W.E.B. Du Bois was there, a towering figure even then, and Haitian intellectuals like Antonor Firmin, known for his work countering racist theories, and Benito Sylvain. Interestingly, they had already been discussing a similar conference themselves before linking up with Williams. Shows the idea was in the air.
What came out of that conference? What was the impact?
Monumental, really. They produced this seminal document, the Address to the Nations of the World. Du Bois was key in drafting it.
What did it say?
It powerfully condemned racial oppression in the U.S., in Africa, boldly demanded self-government for colonies, and it famously included that line, "The problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line."
Wow. In 1900. That's incredibly prescient.
Isn't it? Predicting that racial inequality would define the century, a challenge we're still dealing with, sadly.
What else did the conference achieve?
Well, it formally recognized women's rights in the struggle, which was progressive for the time. It started serious talks about reparations for slavery and colonialism. And crucially, it formally established Pan-African and Pan-Africanism as the terms, gave the movement its name.
And it strengthened those networks you mentioned.
Absolutely. It consolidated the Pan-African networks that were forming, linked activists across Europe, North America, the Caribbean, Africa, made it a more coherent, organized force.
So 1900 lays the groundwork. But then comes someone who takes it to the masses.
Exactly. If the London Conference was the intellectual and organizational seed, Marcus Garvey and his UNIA, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, really made it grow, mobilize people on a scale never seen before.
Tell us about Garvey.
He was a Jamaican journalist, activist, founded the UNIA and African Communities League in Jamaica in 1914. His motto gives you the scale of his vision: one God, one aim, one destiny.
What were those aims?
A universal confederacy amongst the race, promoting racial pride and love, fostering education, businesses, all designed to uplift Black people globally. His drive came from seeing injustice everywhere and wanting to build Black self-sufficiency, Black governance.
Was his idea completely new? Shipping lines, repatriation.
Interestingly, no. The sources mention Chief Alfred Sam, a trader from the Gold Coast. Back in 1913, he led an African movement, trying to set up direct trade links, encouraging emigration to West Africa. Even got a ship.
But Garvey built on something already there.
In a way, Sam's effort set an important precedent for Garvey's Black Star Line, his famous shipping company, and plans for African repatriation. It showed some African Americans were already thinking about returning, a sentiment Garvey tapped into brilliantly.
And the UNA's growth was significant.
Significant is an understatement. It became the largest African American organization and largest Pan-African organization in history. Its rise happened alongside the New Negro movement, the Harlem Renaissance, this new wave of Black assertiveness. Garvey gave it structure, a powerful narrative.
And it wasn't just in the U.S.
Genuinely global. Branches everywhere. Across the U.S., yes, but all through the Caribbean. Over 50 branches in Cuba, nearly 50 in Panama, Canada, South America, even Europe, Britain, France.
How did the message spread so far back then?
Sailors were crucial. Often members themselves, they carried the UNIA newspaper Negro World everywhere. It became this lifeline of information, inspiration, reached all the way to Southern Africa.
And it had an impact there, too.
Huge impact. Garvey's slogan, Africa for the Africans, resonated deeply. It profoundly influenced later movements like the ANC Youth League in South Africa, shows the power of these ideas to cross oceans and ignite change.
But Garvey's later years, there was controversy.
Yes, significant controversy. He became increasingly isolated, made these claims that Mussolini copied our fascism, that the UNIA's aggressive nationalism influenced Mussolini and Hitler.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Not good at all. It discredited him further with many Pan-Africanists, like African students in Britain. A really unfortunate turn that highlights the complexities, the sometimes divisive nature of leadership in these big movements.
So while Garvey was mobilizing the masses, Du Bois was taking a different approach.
A very different approach. More diplomatic, more intellectual, with his series of Pan-African congresses. Du Bois is often called the father of Pan-Africanism for his role in reviving the term after 1900 and trying to create a central movement.
How did he see the movement?
He said, "The African movement means to us what the Zionist movement means to the Jews, the centralization of the race effort and the recognition of a racial fount." He saw Africa as the spiritual political center.
And he organized congresses after World War I.
Yes. The first was in 1919 in Paris, timed with the Versailles Peace Conference. The NAACP supported it. It aimed to ameliorate the condition of colored peoples throughout the world. It was also partly a way for Du Bois to assert leadership against Garvey's rising popularity. Different style.
What about the later congresses?
1921 was notable, held in London, Brussels, and Paris. It brought together key figures, Dr. John Alcindor in London, Paul Panda Farnana in Brussels. Farnana actually defended Garvey against some attacks, showing the connections even amid rivalry.
What was discussed?
In Paris, Du Bois powerfully critiqued the exploitation of Africa by predatory capital, really hitting the economic angle. But despite all this, they didn't manage to set up a permanent organization then. Internal differences, probably. They kept trying, though. Smaller meetings in 23 in London, Lisbon. Persistent effort.
So two main strategies emerged: Du Bois' diplomatic, intellectual track, and Garvey's mass mobilization.
Exactly. Both vital in different ways for building momentum, articulating the demands of Pan-Africanism.
Now, there was another major influence emerging around this time: communism.
A huge influence. After the Russian Revolution in 1917, the Communist International, the Comintern, formed in 1919, took a surprisingly revolutionary Pan-Africanist approach. They openly, strongly opposed colonialism.
How did they frame it?
Their thesis on the Negro question in 1922 was bold, declared the Negro problem has become a vital question of the world revolution. Meaning, Black liberation was seen as essential to the global fight against capitalism and imperialism.
That must have resonated with many Black activists and intellectuals.
Incredibly so. Think about it. Figures like Du Bois again, poets Claude McKay, Langston Hughes, the great Paul Robeson, future leaders like Jomo Kenyatta, Kwame Nkrumah, they were all inspired. They looked at the Soviet Union as maybe a model, a society trying to be free from oppression, from racism, a huge contrast to what they saw at home.
And the Soviets actively reached out.
Yes. Black students were recruited to study in Moscow at the University of the Toilers of the East. They got political training, built international anti-colonial links.
Were there specific groups blending these ideas?
Definitely. The African Blood Brotherhood, the ABB, formed 1919. It explicitly combined Marxist analysis with Pan-Africanism, advocated for immediate protection and ultimate liberation of Negroes everywhere.
Was there overlap with Garvey's movement?
Fascinatingly, yes. Many UNA members were also linked to the ABB. And Garvey himself, initially at least, welcomed the Soviet Union, shows how fluid these anti-imperialist alliances were early on. Shared enemy, common ground.
Was there a key moment for this communist Pan-African connection?
The League Against Imperialism, or LAI, conference in Brussels in 1927, a real landmark.
Why? Who was there?
It brought delegates from all across the colonial world, a united front, people like Nehru from India, even Albert Einstein lent his name, and they set up a Negro Commission.
What did that commission do?
It hammered out this comprehensive common resolution on the Negro question, demanded complete freedom of the peoples of Africa and of African origin, equality, African control of land and government, abolition of all oppressive practices. The sources call it perhaps the most politically developed statement formulated on this issue up to that time. Really clear, radical stuff.
Then Italy invaded Ethiopia in 1935. How did that impact things?
It was a massive catalyst. Ethiopia held huge symbolic weight, one of only 2 independent African nations then. Its invasion sparked global Pan-African outrage and solidarity like never before.
And communist groups were involved in the response?
Often spearheaded the response alongside anti-colonial groups. It fueled this real militancy that contrasted with the more formal protests of Du Bois' congresses, pushed things towards more direct action.
Did new organizations form out of this?
Yes, crucially, the International African Service Bureau, or IASB, in London, 1937.
Who was behind that?
A powerhouse group. George Padmore, Jomo Kenyatta, Ras Makonnen. Their aim was to support the demands of Africans, Asians, and other colonial peoples for democratic rights, civil liberties, and self-determination.
Were they aligned with Marxist ideas?
Many consider themselves Marxists, yes. They explicitly linked Pan-Africanism with internationalism. They worked with U.S. groups like Paul Robeson's International Committee on African Affairs, and they produced really influential books. Padmore's How Britain Rules Africa, C.L.R. James's The Black Jacobins, essential reading.
Okay, let's jump forward now. Mid-20th century, decolonization is gathering speed. The 1945 Manchester Pan-African Congress sounds important.
Absolutely a turning point. The timing was critical. World War II was raging, or just ending. Africans had fought for Allied freedom while their own countries were still colonies.
And the promises weren't kept.
Exactly. The Atlantic Charter promised self-determination, but Churchill basically said, oh, that doesn't apply to colonies. Huge sense of betrayal. It fueled demands for real change, self-government. Now,
what made the Manchester Congress different?
2 key things. First, for the first time, delegates mainly represented farmers and workers' organizations, not just intellectuals, grassroots power. Second, it brought together this new generation, people who'd soon lead independent nations. Kwame Nkrumah, Jomo Kenyatta were there.
And their goals were ambitious.
Very. Promote the well-being and unity of African peoples, demand self-determination and independence, secure equality, cooperate with each other and allies. It laid the political groundwork for the independence wave that followed. Theory became action.
Then Ghana's independence in 1957. A massive moment.
A defining moment, definitely. Resonated everywhere. George Padmore called Ghana the beacon light guiding an oppressed race out of the darkness into the light of freedom. Powerful imagery.
And Nkrumah really embraced that Pan-African role.
Absolutely. Famously said Ghana's independence was meaningless unless linked to the total liberation of Africa, and he invited African Americans, others from the diaspora, to come back, help build Africa's future.
Did people take him up on it?
Major figures did. Maya Angelou, W.E.B. Du Bois himself, he spent his last years in Ghana, became a citizen. It was a powerful symbol of return.
So Pan-Africanism was now being institutionalized in Africa.
Exactly. Moving from ideas to policy. Just a year after independence, April 1958, Nkrumah and Padmore organized the first conference of independent African states in Accra.
Who attended?
Representatives from the 8 independent African states at the time. They met to forge closer links of friendship, brotherhood, cooperation, and solidarity.
What did they commit to?
Asserting an African personality globally, supporting independence struggles like Algeria's, opposing racism, cooperating economically and culturally. This really cemented a continent-led Pan-African agenda. The center of gravity shifted.
And that led to more conferences?
Yes, the All-African Peoples Conferences, Accra again in 1958, then Tunis 1960, Cairo 1961. The 58 Accra one, co-organized with Sekou Touré of Guinea, was huge. Still celebrated.
What were the themes there?
Really forward-looking, decolonizing knowledge, new politics for democracy and security, economic liberation. There was a key debate, too. Frantz Fanon argued forcefully that all forms of struggle must be adopted, not excluding violence, challenging Nkrumah's nonviolent approach.
Did women have a voice?
Yes, the conference specifically called for an African Women's Association conference recognizing their vital role.
And the later conferences focused on workers.
Tunis and Cairo specifically looked at uniting African workers, led to plans for the All-Africa Trade Union Federation, AAUF. The aim was an independent African labor movement, free from Cold War politics, an African voice for workers.
All this building towards the OAU.
Precisely. This rapid institutionalization culminated in the Organization of African Unity, the OAU, founded in Addis Ababa in 1963. A huge step. Formalized continental unity, cooperation, dispute resolution, Pan-African vision in governmental form.
And women's organizations formalized too.
Yes, critically. The Pan-African Women's Organization, PAWO, it grew out of regional groups, became the African Women's Union, AWU, in 1962 in Dar es Salaam, then renamed PAWO in 74. It showed this growing recognition of women's central role, not just in fighting colonialism, but in building the new nations, a holistic view of liberation.
Okay, let's shift focus slightly now. Mid-late 20th century, the rise of Black power.
Yes, particularly prominent in the U.S. from the mid-60s. A powerful assertion for racial solidarity, cultural pride, and self-determination.
Stokely Carmichael coined the phrase.
He popularized it, yeah. Kwame Ture, as he later became known, Trinidad-born activist, shouted Black Power in 1966. It caught fire.
What did it mean for groups like SNCC?
For the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, it meant political control. Black people coming together, electing their own representatives, controlling their own communities, but crucially, it connected directly to Africa.
How so?
They recognized that seeing Black men ruling their own nations gives Blacks elsewhere a sense of possibility, of power. It wasn't just a U.S. thing, it was part of a wider third world struggle against domination by Europe and the U.S. global context.
And Malcolm X was key here too, in globalizing it.
Absolutely pivotal. His travels in Africa, Egypt, Ghana, Nigeria, Sudan in '59 profoundly inspired him. Seeing those independence movements shifted him from the Nation of Islam's approach towards a broader Pan-African framework for Black liberation.
They saw the connections.
Exactly. After more African tours in '64, he formed the Organization of Afro-American Unity, the OAAU.
Patterned after the OAU.
Explicitly patterned after the letter and spirit of the OAU. The OAAU declared, "We have one destiny and we've had one past." It aimed to empower African Americans to control their destiny in America and Africa. The sources say it was one of the first organizations in this period to be specifically concerned with what came to be referred to as Black Power, linking the domestic and the global.
And this Black Power idea spread beyond the U.S.
Oh, definitely, across the diaspora. In the Caribbean, Garveyism was still a powerful foundation for it.
Garvey's influence lingered that strongly.
Absolutely. When Garvey's body was returned to Jamaica in '64, and then Emperor Haile Selassie visited in '66, huge boosts for Rastafarianism, for identification with Africa. Walter Rodney, the great historian and activist, talked about how Black power in the Caribbean blended Garveyism, Black nationalism, and Marxism, diverse roots.
What about in Britain?
It took hold there, too. Malcolm X's visits were influential, but also local realities, racist attacks like Notting Hill in '58, groups formed like the Universal Colored People's Association and the British Black Panther Party, the first one outside the U.S.
What was their focus?
A mix of radical politics, revolutionary overthrow of capitalism, Maoism, Pan-Africanism, Third World unity, but also crucial community work. Breakfast programs, legal aid, and importantly, gender became a bigger focus, leading to specific Black women's groups forming.
Alongside the politics, there was a huge cultural shift too.
Massive. The Black Power era really championed this critique of Eurocentrism, of how African culture had been denigrated. It promoted this powerful cultural revival, summed up perfectly in that slogan, "Black is beautiful."
Building on earlier movements.
Directly, building on the Harlem Renaissance, on the Negritude movement in French-speaking areas.
Tell us more about Negritude.
It was this francophone literary cultural movement. Key figures, Aimé Césaire from Martinique, Léopold Senghor from Senegal. They started the journal Présence Africaine in 1947.
What was its goal?
To affirm the presence of the Black communities, defend the originality of their way of life and the dignity of their culture. Direct link to earlier Pan-African cultural pride. Frantz Fanon, who studied under Césaire, argued racism destroys cultural values and only total liberation could restore them.
This cultural affirmation led to big festivals.
Yes, major international ones, though sometimes with different visions. The First World Congress of Negro Writers and Artists, Paris of '56, Rome of '59, organized by Présence Africaine, aimed to confirm, exalt, and glorify Black cultures.
But there was a Cold War angle.
Interestingly, yeah, the U.S. delegation's involvement was partly secretly funded by the CIA. Trying to offset communist influence shows how the Cold War touched everything.
Then there was the Dakar Festival in '66.
The First World Festival of Negro Arts in Dakar, Senegal, organized by Senghor's government and UNESCO, showcased the Negro's unique creative ability. But it got criticized.
Why?
Felt too focused on negritude, maybe too close to France neo-colonially, and disconnected from the ongoing liberation struggles. Seemed more aesthetic than political to some.
So there was a reaction to that.
A direct challenge, the first Pan-African Cultural Festival in Algiers, Algeria, in 1969. Its message was explicit. Culture is a weapon in our struggle for liberation. Much more radical.
Who was there?
Liberation movements like MPLA from Angola, Frelimo from Mozambique, the Black Panther Party from the U.S., and they explicitly opposed negritude. The call was for African culture to be a culture of combat, culture as a tool for revolution.
This cultural energy was felt elsewhere too, like Brazil.
Oh, Brazil has a long, rich history of Afro-Brazilian organizing. Groups like the Black Front back in 1931, the Black Experimental Theater, BET, from 1944.
And they promoted Black is Beautiful.
Remarkably early, the BET championed it in the early 1950s, way before it took off in the U.S., using cultural self-determination as resistance against repression and racism, culture as survival, as liberation.
And in the U.S., the Black Arts Movement.
Yes, heavily influenced by Malcolm X, the Panthers. It sought a specific Black aesthetic, a trans-Africa style,
Sure.
connecting African-American arts, poetry, theater, visual arts back to an African framework.
Was there internal debate?
Yes, between cultural nationalism, focus on Black institutions, culture and revolutionary nationalism, focus on political, economic change. But the shared goal was authentic, African-centered expression.
And music played a big role.
Huge. Became a global Pan-African voice. Think James Brown, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, 68. Nina Simone, Young, Gifted, and Black, 70.
And artists from Africa.
Absolutely. Miriam Makeba Mama Africa, campaigning against apartheid. Fela Kuti in Nigeria, pioneering Afrobeat. Their music carried Pan-African pride, political themes worldwide, soundtracks to liberation.
And reggae Rastafarianism.
Became global symbols of resistance, Pan-African identity. Bob Marley, Burning Spear, the Abyssinians. Deeply rooted in Ethiopia as a symbol of independence, this African Zion. Rasta fundamentally flipped the Eurocentric view, asserting African spiritual and cultural identity. The music, the look, the dreadlocks, a powerful global statement of Black consciousness.
This period also saw Afrocentrism emerge as a scholarly movement.
Yes, this new Pan-African scholarship, directly challenging Eurocentrism's dominance in academia and culture.
What did it advocate for?
Fiercely advocated for Black studies, African studies, to be reconstructed along Afrocentric lines and from a Pan-African perspective, really shifting the viewpoint.
What were its core ideas?
Emphasizing the African origin of civilization, pushing back against narratives that ignored or downplayed Africa's contributions. Championing the African nature of ancient Egypt with key figures like Cheikh Anta Diop, Martin Bernal's Black Athena, recentering Africa in history.
Was it universally accepted?
It faced criticism, sure. Some argued it presented maybe a monolithic view of Africa or made historical claims needing more evidence. But its lasting impact was forcing that critical reevaluation of history, centering African perspectives, paved the way for more inclusive scholarship.
Okay, bringing us closer to the present. Pan-Africanism in the 21st century. The 7th Pan-African Congress in Kampala, 1994.
Yes, this came out of the Black Power energy. Nkrumah had actually suggested a meeting in Africa much earlier. This one aimed to learn from the 6th Congress in '74, which was seen as dominated by governments. They wanted more grassroots involvement.
Did it work out that way?
Not entirely. Despite preparatory meetings globally, it ended up with significant government involvement again. Accusations flew about leaders trying to aggrandize themselves. Some governments even blocked opponents from attending.
So it caused divisions.
It alienated some activists. Yeah, some boycotted. It highlighted that ongoing tension. Grassroots movements versus state-led initiatives, the challenge of unifying diverse interests under the Pan-African banner.
But institutionally, things kept moving forward, the African Union.
Absolutely. The AU, formed in 2002, replaced the OAU, marked a third phase of the institutionalization of Pan-Africanism, deeper integration, cooperation.
And did it explicitly embrace the diaspora?
Critically, yes. The Surte Declaration in 1999, leading up to the AU, stated leaders were inspired by the ideals which guided the Founding Fathers and generations of Pan-Africanists. And it declared the AU encompassed the entire African diaspora.
That's huge. Formal continental recognition.
Monumental, acknowledging that interconnectedness Pan-Africanism had championed for centuries.
How did this affect the call for reparations?
It significantly boosted it. The late 20th century saw a renewed focus on reparations for slavery, colonialism. Activists started using that term global Africa continent and diaspora as one entity demanding justice.
Was there a key conference on reparations?
Yes, the first Pan-African Conference on Reparations in Abuja, Nigeria, 1993, sponsored by the OAU and Nigeria.
What was argued there?
Chief MKO Abiola made a powerful case, argued reparations should be as legally obligatory as the payments on Africa's debt burden, linking historical injustice to current economics.
And this led to the UN Durban Conference.
Paved the way for it. The UN World Conference Against Racism, WCAR, in Durban, 2001. The African and African Descendants Caucus, alongside African governments, made a united demand.
What was the demand?
Recognition of the slave trade, slavery, colonialism as crimes against humanity, a crucial legal and moral step, and an unequivocal call for reparations for Africans and African descendants globally.
How was that received?
It was heavily contested by the governments of the former colonial powers. Britain, for instance, denied the slave trade was a crime against humanity. The U.S. didn't even attend the conference. No universal agreement.
But the call didn't die down.
Not at all. It's continued powerfully into the 21st century. CARICOM nations, the Caribbean community, joined the demand as a bloc in 2013, shows its ongoing, undeniable relevance in human rights today.
So despite some maybe dismissing it as a dream, Pan-Africanism is still very relevant.
Undeniably relevant, the sources conclude. Why? Because fundamentally, many consider that Africa and Africans are still not completely free or united. The work isn't finished.
The core problems persist.
Racism, Eurocentrism, the legacies of enslavement, colonialism, new forms of global imperialism. They're as evident today as they were in 1897 when Henry Sylvester Williams started the African Association.
So the need for unity remains.
Absolutely. Despite massive changes like formal colonial rule ending, that fundamental need for all those of African descent to unite, to speak and act as one in order to change the world in the interests of Africa and all those of African heritage, that still resonates with real urgency. Pan-Africanism remains dynamic, necessary, unfinished.
What a journey. We've gone through centuries here. From those first sparks of resistance in the diaspora, the absolute game changer of Haiti.
Through Garvey's mass movement, Du Bois' diplomacy, the institutionalization with the OAU and AU, the cultural power of Black is beautiful, the ongoing fight for reparations.
It's fascinating how that core belief, African unity, shared destiny, just keeps adapting. Expressed through art, politics, struggle, persisting through huge challenges, internal debates, different strategies.
It really is a testament to the enduring power of that collective vision.
So, as you listening reflect on all this, here's something to think about. We live in a world that's incredibly connected, but also often feels really fragmented. What new forms might Pan-Africanism take today? How might it address current challenges, things like climate change impacts on Africa and the diaspora, technological divides, new kinds of cultural exploitation?
And maybe broader than that. How can the lessons from this incredible history, this deep struggle for unity, for self-determination, this unwavering belief in linked fates and collective action, how can those lessons inspire us, give us those aha moments? How might they inform other global movements fighting for justice, for equity, for human dignity, even far beyond the scope of African liberation itself?